Cleaning the pile of shame. Hey everyone, it's Mishmash, and today I'm going to be making kind of a disjointed cleaning the pile of shame. For today's video, I tried painting this Death Cult Executioner from the 2019 Rogue Trader set. And I'll be real with you, this one was kinda rough to make. I had vastly underestimated how long blending would take, as I wanted to try something new, considering I've been painting for almost 10 years. And I guess I never really tried blending, mostly because I was always afraid that I was gonna mess up, which is kind of ironic considering the whole point of this channel is the importance of failure being kind of a key factor in your success long term. But the thing is it really did take a lot longer than I was expecting. And as a result, my phone died several times during recording, and I didn't realize it. So a good portion of the footage is actually missing. So today's episode is less of a painting tutorial and more of a story time with Mishmash.
Yay, story time with Mishmash!
Oh, and I'll keep captions on for all the paints I'm using when you can actually see what I'm doing, as well as the ratios of what I'm blending together. Anyway, let's get into it. The first story I have for all of you is the story of my first miniature. I've talked briefly about this before, but I figured I'd go into more detail. I was around 14 when I got into the hobby. I had a couple of friends that wanted me to build an army because they had started getting into it, and we all wanted to paint miniatures together. It kinda happened, but you know, it fizzled out over time. I had gone to my local hobby store and I got a box of Space Marines. Mostly because they were the coolest looking army to me, and like every noob to Warhammer, I decided, hey, I'll go for the poster boys. So when I first started painting, I didn't really understand how much time and effort actually went into the hobby. I had watched a few videos from the Apathetic Fish and some other YouTubers around that time, and most of their videos were edited to the point that I couldn't, decipher how long it took paint to dry, because they would have these jump cuts where they started base coating the miniature, and within, 2 seconds it's already this perfect opaque color. So I even with that, I don't understand why I thought it would be so easy. But I remember specifically my dad telling me, are you sure you know what you're doing before I started painting? Because I had this weird scuffed setup where I would take poster putty, put it on top of a big, those big bottles of Perrier, and I would stick the miniature onto the putty on this bottle of Perrier. And I would spray the miniature with automotive primer, which, as you probably know, is a very, very thick paint. So, yeah, you could probably guess where that happened. What happened as a result of me not preparing. I had a Space Marine that looked like it was surviving a melted marshmallow accident, with his face completely obscured. The paint was so thick, and I had spent so much time building him. No removing of mold lines, mind you. I just kind of clipped him out, and, still to this day, I still kind of struggle with that, to be honest. But he looked utterly destroyed. I mean, just obliterated with primer. And I didn't say anything to him after I came inside, because I didn't want to give him the satisfaction of, you weren't prepped, were you? And, yeah. So I started painting him, and even that process, I didn't want to paint another miniature. When I started base coating, I couldn't believe how much effort it took. And I think it was Macragge Blue. I think I went for classic Ultramarines, so I used Macragge Blue. And, looking now, I mean, Macragge Blue is not that thin a color. It's a base color. But I was like, oh, two coats over this? I gotta wait this long? And it's just interesting to me now where my patience over the time that I've been painting, and it comes with maturity too. I have a lot more patience towards waiting for minis to dry. And all these other things where to make the miniature look better, you have to be patient. Not that there aren't methods of making a miniature, faster, but I still look back and it's just amazing to me because I still have the miniature. And it wasn't until I had the rest of the box to go through, because I just was like, maybe I'll build them and maybe I'll get inspiration to paint them later, which I absolutely did. I think miniature building is just as fun as painting. I think it is once you start getting into the kit bashing element, I think that's where I really, really started enjoying the hobby, is making your own guys. And I did. I made my own color scheme. I used like Wog Flesh and Balthasar Gold, so it was basically just the ultramarine color scheme, but instead of Macragge Blue, I used Wog Flesh. And I really, really enjoyed it. And it was around it was such a, like I said, scuffed ass setup. I only had like a bunch of paints that I knew that I needed. I didn't bother going with highlight colors. I just kind of got like the base colors. But I had a friend who, I think his dad was into the hobby, and he had paints from like the old GW days. Like, I still have the pots around here somewhere as relics. The paint is long gone. But he had an old, you remember when Citadel had the black pots? It was Agrax Earthshade, and I had no idea what it was for. And then I put it over one of my Green Marines, and I realized, oh my god, this is amazing. I get it now. I really, really get it now. It's these little tiny things that you overlook when you're first getting into the hobby. And it is weird, like, the amount of times I see people that are new to painting that they almost, like, avoid shade paints like the plague. It's really weird, and I've seen this from other people noticing this too, so I know I'm not insane. But there's so many new hobbyists that I meet that their basing is perfectly good. Their colors are nice and flat, and there's no crumbs or anything like that. All that it really needs is a good shade, and it would look great for a tabletop standard. And they just don't do it. And I discovered it by accident, so I can't really give anyone shit for it. You gotta push them in the right direction after all. But once I had used that Agrax Earthshade, and I even tried, I got fancy with it. I started just doing recess shades. I didn't just dunk it in, basically. I realized how these small little things can really make something great. And I think it's funny over time that I've found these small things like base coating at one point such an agonizingly boring process to what I'm doing now with this miniature, where I started blending, because I find blending kind of fun, but over time I started to feel like I was losing my mind. Like, it was just the amount of time I would just sit there and kind of aimlessly doing it. And I have to look at reference when I'm blending. I mean, I can see things in my head for color schemes and whatnot, but like, blending is one of those things that I find to be a lot more difficult in terms of what you can do just out of your head. I mean, the main way that I did this was using my hobby lamp and using the reference of the shine above on the Mini to give me kind of a way of tracing it. But my greater point is, I think it's really interesting that almost 10 years later, I still get hung up on those hitches of thinking, oh my god, this takes so long, dude. And it does. That doesn't make it any less long, but I think it's kind of amazing that no matter how long I do this, I still have yet to find my skill ceiling. And pushing forward to keep learning these new methods and these kind of sophisticated patterns that you have to memorize, I think it's what makes miniature painting so fun to me. And why I really do struggle to paint full armies, because I always want to paint something new. And this is a sentiment that is shared by plenty of hobbyists. It's why the pile of shame stereotype exists, is we get so enamored with a new thing, where there are times where I don't even want to paint Warhammer, and I'm primarily painting more Warhammer than usual for the channel's sake. because I know that's the biggest demographic of miniature painters. But there are times I won't touch Warhammer for months, and I'll just paint like Dungeons and Dragons or just knights in general and fantasy stuff. My greater point is that there's always room to improve when it comes to this hobby. Now, if you're trying to paint armies, I think it is good to try to find that kind of skill ceiling in terms of like good quality mixed with, you're not taking too much time to paint. But when you get to a point where I'm at now, because the only time I ever build anything is for Kill Team, which I've been doing actually more frequently. I mostly paint for fun. And when you're painting for fun, there's no limit to what you can do. There is no end in sight, in my opinion. At least from what I can see now, where I think there's no way that I could do that at any point. I know that I can keep going, I can keep trying. As long as I keep painting and learn and, it really is just a amount of like, how much are you willing to sacrifice time-wise and whatnot. But I think what makes it such a, what makes it so satisfying to me is looking back at old miniatures that I've painted from even like half a year ago and seeing what I'm painting now. And I encourage you, if you're listening to this, take a miniature that you're painting now. Maybe you're painting at this very second, when you're listening to this. Take that miniature, and once it's finished, take a picture of it. Or just put it up next to a miniature that you paint in 6 months and see how much you've improved. Because it is kind of crazy the way that I look at my miniatures now. Especially like a year ago, I painted a bunch of Imperial Fists, and I thought, this is the best I can do. And in one afternoon recently, I painted another Imperial Fist of the same box, and I outdid myself significantly. It's kind of annoying because he kind of stands out like a sore thumb among the other Imperial Fists with how much that I've, learned via decal setting and just new tricks to make the painting yellow easier. It's just... And that's another thing. Try not to fall into the habit of getting discouraged by painting something better than a previous miniature. Because I've definitely had times where I've looked at a miniature that I wish I could paint or go back and not paint so I could wait until I'm at the skill level where I am now. Which is just unrealistic, and it's just unfair to yourself to do that. I don't know. I don't think it's exclusive to me, but maybe I'm projecting, whatever. But for our next little story, I just wanted to go into more of a negative aspect, because who doesn't like a juicy bit of drama, right? But back when I first got into the hobby, it was around the time that Discord had just started, at least to my knowledge, because it was in beta. And I had joined a Warhammer group, and I think I was in my 3rd year, maybe 2nd year of painting. And I joined a group, and I met some pretty cool dudes. It was actually quite nice, because I think they had just gotten into actually painting. They'd been into the books for a while, and they were teaching me some things about the lore that I was like, oh, I actually have never looked into, because when it comes to Warhammer lore, I can know the basics. I don't know much about more of the Xeno races and whatnot. But, we were all hanging out, we were shooting the shit. I was really young, and I was showing my miniatures to these older guys, and it was kind of cool. It was like, oh, I'm able to, they were throwing out requests for things that I could paint in the future, and it was cool. But it was during the summer, and at the time I wasn't working. So people kind of pitter-pattered out of the channel, and I was by myself, and I feel kind of bad telling this story because I sound like a dick. I'm still gonna tell it anyway. But I was in there, and this dude shows up, and I'm still a teenager. I'm not even like 18 yet, and I'm just like, hello, you want to see my miniatures? And he's like, yeah. And then I show him my miniatures, and he kind of was like, oh, nice. and he kind of brushes off everything that I'm saying. And I don't really know what to say because I'm, even now, kind of a socially awkward little crawdad. But especially back then, I was, all the more. So I don't know what to say to him because he's, not really giving me anything to feed off of. So I'm just kind of sitting there and I'm idly playing with my dice. And I was like, I'm trying to engage. And I said, what army do you paint? And he goes, oh, I don't paint. I'm like, oh, that's okay. He goes, yeah, my wife took all the money in the divorce. And I'm like, what? And he goes, yeah, she wanted to ship in a Mini Cooper from the UK because the steering wheel was on the opposite side, which I don't think that's street legal. I maybe in all these years, I never looked it up. I never bothered looking it up, so maybe I'll look it up after this. But he starts going into this, and I'm just sitting there, like, just dumbfounded because, like, and again, I feel kind of bad telling the story because I sound like a dick repeating it, but it stuck with me for so long because I was just dumbfounded at, this shotgun blast of a bomb. It was like a bomb and a shotgun blast. Like the bomb exploded and then shotgun shot out at me. And I'm just like sitting there not knowing what to say. And he's going on for a solid like half hour about how rotten this bitch is. And she's a bitch. Like undoubtedly, she just sounds like a rotten woman. I mean, maybe he was lying. I don't know, but I can only take what he was telling me with, he was the only evidence. I never talked to her. Maybe he was lying. But I remember sitting there and I tried talking to other people about it afterwards because I was like, is he okay? Like, is he all right? And I never heard anything out of him. He was gone. So I don't know if he even exists anymore. If he's out there, I hope you're doing okay, by the way. I hope that you have enough money and, I hope you can paint miniatures again because you seem to have passion for it. And I strive for anyone to be an artist. So whoever that guy was that dropped that bombshell on me about 8 years ago, I hope you're doing well. I hope you're painting. And I hopefully hopefully your ex gets her goofy ass British Mini Cooper towed or something. I don't fucking know. I've run into I don't know, it's always interesting because I always talk about how positive the mini painting community has been, especially in the last few years. Because it wasn't always like this. And not that I don't really care all too much. If somebody makes fun of my miniatures, it's like, oh, well, I know I'm at a place now where I can say that they are good to a degree, so it doesn't really bother me too much. But I found, especially with Warhammer nerds, that there are so many that you meet that are either the nicest people you ever come across or the chuddiest of chuds. And I'll never forget when I went to my hobby store and I walked in and it was around the time Dark Imperium came out. I was at the paint rack and there was this guy that was just kind of a circle, and I was sitting there and I was trying to get to paints and he was blocking the whole goddamn paint rack, which is just an anomaly. I don't know how that's even possible. But I am convinced this guy, in a bid of getting me to stay away from his paint rack, flooded his pants with diarrhea because the unholy Nurgle stench that occurred, I'm surprised my eyebrows didn't burn off like in SpongeBob, because I'm surprised the government didn't show up to arrest him for biological warfare. It was, usually I'm not that weak-willed, but Jesus Christ, this guy had a gut that was just working overtime to produce the absolute stench of corruption. Just a boiling pot of evil. I don't know how many more hyperbolic things I can really say, but it's true. And I remember I don't get confrontational. I'm a very quiet guy, but it made me so angry. When you experience something that's so outlandishly rude that you you just kind of lose your gosh darn marbles. Yeah, I almost lost my dang marbles that day. And again, I feel kind of bad telling this story because I'm sure that, like, that was really embarrassing for him. But at the same time, I almost died, so, like, I'm the victim. I'm the victim. And if you say otherwise, nuh-uh. But I think to come to a close, I have, like, one more story. And I think with this one, it's kind of hard for me to tell this story because even with those last two where I felt like I was a jerk, I think this one made me realize a lot when it comes to painting minis. Just, it's cool to have admiration from your peers, as you know, in the hobby. But it was really, I was part of a Warhammer group and they did a contest for, you know, best painted miniature, and it was a small group. And I remember I really took it seriously because I was at a point where I really started getting into a groove of hobby painting. And I painted a Salamander Deathwatch mini. And I really put a lot of time and effort into it. And it looked good. I still have it. But I remember specifically somebody, it was all votes. It was like, you know, everyone had to vote for it. And there is this one miniature that won that beat me by a few more votes that I looked at, and it was so annoying because I could tell that the guy put very little effort into it, and it was just a matter of him obscuring his camera to make it look better than it was. And I felt so annoyed that I didn't win. And then I realized, like, if I know that it's better, and that I know that I painted really well, then why should it matter to me what other people think of my minis at the end of the day? If I really liked the miniature and I put a lot of hard work into it and I know that I did, I don't care anymore. And I think that's what really made all of it work for me, why this hobby is still in my, you know, because I draw. I have other hobbies beyond painting, but the reason this is my go-to and why it's my most defining hobby is because I don't feel like I have to prove anything to anyone at this point. I love painting miniatures for myself, and I hope all of you strive to be that way too, because I think that's the best mindset you can possibly have for any hobby. And it's not like I don't share my miniatures. I love sharing them. I love talking with other people about the hobby and how to learn from those other people and teaching people. Hence why it's kind of frustrating that I didn't get to do that with this episode. Hopefully the footage that you're seeing in the background is helpful. But I think what really makes this all worth it to me is every time I walk by my display case and I see all the little characters I've made over my time, I can't help but feel so much pride in my work and my craft, because I did that. All of that is because of me. And you should feel that way too, because you are creating a little world by every time you paint these dumb little dolls. You are making something that may not mean anything else to anyone but yourself. And I think that's kind of perfect. And it's kind of funny considering that ever since I started this channel, I've been sharing my miniatures, I've been sharing my stories, I've been sharing what I know and all the things that I've accomplished in the hobby, because I want to help people get to the point that I'm at. And there's a lot of things that I could learn still too. And no matter how long you're in the hobby, that never changes. I think that's the beauty of this, is that there's always somewhere to climb to. And once that building that is your skill, you've built up too high, you have to start building outward, because there's always something that you could learn in this hobby. There's always a new style of painting that you could try. I mean, there have been so many styles that I've wanted to implement, because I really feel like I've adopted my style from several others, and I think that goes for everyone. That isn't something unique. Well, it's not unique, but it is unique. But I've always wanted to try more like cartoony designs or more Borderlands-esque painting. And I think with this channel, it'd be really cool to start sort of journaling my own, I guess, evolution with my work and my minis. And I want to share that with some cool new people that, I meet along the way. And I think it would be really cool maybe down the line do some paint-alongs with some people, and maybe I'll open up something so you can reach out with me and maybe we can collaborate on something. I would love to go out and show people how to paint and learn something from you too. And I think for the most part, I just want to keep doing this until I'm an old, crusty crawdad, sitting in a goddamn wheelchair, breathing out of an oxygen tube, because there will never be a time in my life that I will think no more miniature painting. And I've said this before, but I don't really give a fuck. I think it's kind of cool to do these kinds of things and say these kinds of things, because I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that, I don't think hobby painting is a very discouraged thing, especially now. I mean, I hear stories about that, which is just a really strange thing to get on someone's case for. But anyway, I'm sorry that I couldn't get all the footage for this, as I really would have liked to help you learn how to do this. And maybe I could learn something how to do this better. I'm not sure how I feel about this miniature. I think there's a lot of things that I did really well, but I feel like there's a lot of improvement that could be made on it. So I will, from now on, try my best to be more prepared for things like this in the event that my phone dies. And I just feel like overall, more preparation would make for a better product. I want to make better videos, and I think I am improving with time. I think the videos' qualities are going up steadily, but I just want to keep getting better. So if you stuck to the end, I really, really appreciate it, and I hope I gave you something that you enjoyed. So I will see you in the next video. We're going to do Captain Titus from the Space Marine board game. And until next time, mishmash, kit bash, and paint some fantastic miniatures. And you're gonna. I promise. See ya.
Let's go, I got animated too, man. Woo!